The Council's arrogance. The Grand Assembly Hall floated in the darkness between galaxies. It was a monument to peace, constructed from materials gathered across 1,000 worlds. Inside this crystalline structure, representatives from 14 ancient civilizations had gathered for their bicentennial celebration. They were marking 2,000 years without a single declaration of war. An achievement unprecedented in galactic history. Supreme Arbiter Thelzar stood at the central podium. His species, the Valorians, had been spacefaring for over 5,000 years. His translucent skin shimmered under the hall's bioluminescent lighting as he raised his forearms in ceremonial greeting. The assembled delegates responded with their various gestures of respect. Some hummed, others clicked specialized organs, and a few simply inclined their massive heads. 2 millennia of harmony, Thelzar announced. His voice carried through neural translators to every mind present. 2,000 years since the burning wars nearly destroyed us all. We have built something beautiful from those ashes. The unified accord stands eternal. Applause rippled through the chamber in countless forms. But one delegate remained motionless. Commander Dravek of the Crothian Dominion had not joined the celebration. His species remembered war better than most. Their homeworld still bore scars from conflicts fought before the peace. Supreme Arbiter, Dravek's gravelly voice cut through the celebration. I must raise a matter of concern. The isolated system. Sector 7-Alpha-9. The chamber fell silent. Every species present knew which system he meant. The quarantined world. The locked planet. The forbidden zone that had existed for 18 centuries. Thelzar's expression darkened. The human containment? That matter was settled generations ago, Commander. Why bring it up now? Dravik activated a holographic projection. A yellow star appeared, orbited by 8 planets. The third planet glowed with a blue-green hue, because we can no longer ignore the resources in that system. The asteroid belt contains rare metals worth trillions. The outer planets have fusion materials we desperately need. And that star sits on the most direct trade route between the eastern and western arms. A delegate from the insectoid Chitauri species clicked her mandibles nervously. But the humans, when we found them, they were destroying themselves. Nuclear weapons, chemical warfare, biological agents. They had divided their single world into competing nations, each ready to annihilate the others. The quarantine was necessary for everyone's safety. That was 1,800 years ago, Dravek countered. They were primitive then, barely capable of reaching their own moon. We have 14,000 warships in this sector alone. What threat could they possibly pose now? Thelzar considered this carefully. The truth was that nobody had thought much about the humans in centuries. Automated sentries maintained the quarantine. Any probe sent into the system simply stopped transmitting. The assembly had assumed the humans either destroyed themselves or remained too primitive to matter. What do you propose, Commander? I propose we end this waste of resources. Send a fleet to their system. Offer them a choice. Join the assembly under our terms. Provide access to their resources or face removal. We have the strength. They have nothing. A younger delegate, representing a species that had only recently achieved space travel, spoke up hesitantly. Is this not exactly the kind of thinking that led to the burning wars? Forcing others to submit through military threat? The burning wars were between equals, Dravek replied coldly. This is different. We are not threatening a peer. We are finally dealing with a quarantined species that should never have been left alone for so long. Thelzar looked around the chamber. He saw calculation in many eyes. The resources were tempting. 2,000 years of peace had made the assembly wealthy, but also hungry for more. And there was something else. Fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what the humans might have become in their isolation. "We will vote," Felzar announced. "All in favor of sending an ultimatum to the human system?" One by one, delegates signaled their approval. Some eagerly, others reluctantly, but in the end, the vote was unanimous. Perhaps it was greed. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps it was simply that 2,000 years of peace had made them forget what it meant to poke a sleeping beast. "It is decided," Felzar declared. "We will assemble a fleet of 10,000 warships. We will position them at the edge of the human system. We will give them 30 rotations to respond to our terms." The terms were drafted with care. Humanity would open their borders immediately. They would provide complete technological databases. They would accept assembly governors to oversee their world. They would pay reparations for the cost of maintaining their quarantine. And they would do all of this within 30 days, or face the consequences. The message was encoded and sent via quantum transmission. It would arrive instantly, regardless of distance. The delegates returned to their respective worlds, confident in their decision. After all, what could one isolated, primitive species do against the combined might of 14 ancient civilizations? The answer came exactly 12 hours later. Felzar was in his private chambers when his aide burst through the door, all protocol forgotten. "Supreme Arbiter, the humans have responded." "Already? What do they say? Do they accept our terms?" The aide's face was pale. "They sent a single word, sir." "Just one word." Felzar took the datapad and looked at the screen. There, in the human language with automatic translation beneath it, was their response. Finally, Felzar stared at that word for a long time. There was something deeply unsettling about it. It did not say yes or no. It did not plead for mercy or demand negotiation. It simply said finally, as if they had been waiting, as if they had been expecting this, as if, for 1,800 years, they had been preparing for exactly this moment. He immediately called an emergency session. Within hours, the delegates had reconvened, though many appeared via holographic projection this time. Felzar displayed the human response for all to see. Finally, Dravik read aloud. "What does this mean?" "It means," a quiet voice said from the back of the chamber, "that we may have made a terrible mistake." The speaker was Elder Kixenal of the Preservers, the oldest species in the assembly. They rarely spoke, preferring to observe and record history. But when they did speak, others listened. "Explain yourself, Elder," Felzar requested. Think about what we know of humans," Kixenal said slowly. "When we found them, they were at war with themselves. Not one war, but dozens. Hundreds throughout their history. They are a species that has spent their entire existence learning to fight, to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. And what did we do? We locked them in a cage with themselves as their only opponents. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. You think they unified, Felzar said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think they did more than unify, Kixenal replied. I think they turned their entire civilization into a fortress. Every war they ever fought taught them lessons. Every weapon they ever built showed them possibilities. And we gave them 1,800 years to perfect those lessons, to build those weapons, to prepare for the day when someone would finally open their cage. Dravik slammed a fist on his console. Speculation. Fear-mongering. They had no teachers, no trade partners, no access to advanced technology. Even if they unified, they are still primitive compared to us. Are they? Kixenal asked. When did we last actually look inside their system? When did we last verify what they were doing? Our probes stopped working centuries ago. We assumed it was because they lacked technology. What if it was because they were actively destroying our probes? The chamber erupted in debate. Some dismissed Kixenol's concerns as paranoia. Others began to worry. Thelzar sat silently, staring at that single-word response. Finally, the more he looked at it, the more it felt like a promise. Or perhaps a threat. "It is too late to stop now," Dravek declared. "The fleet is already assembling. We sent our ultimatum. If we back down now, we look weak. Every species in the assembly will question our authority." "Pride," Kixenol murmured. "The same thing that started the burning wars." But Dravek was right about one thing. The momentum was unstoppable now. 10,000 warships were gathering at the edge of human space. The largest fleet assembled in 1,000 years. Surely, regardless of what the humans had been doing, they could not stand against such overwhelming force. Commander Dravek himself took control of the fleet. He stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Justice, watching the human star system grow larger on his screens. Around him, 9,999 other warships held formation. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of their respective species' technology. Energy shields that could withstand tremendous punishment. Weapons that could crack planets. Propulsion systems that bent space itself. A voice filled every bridge of every ship in the fleet. It spoke in the human language, but the neural translators worked instantly. The voice was female, calm, and carried an undertone of something that made Dravek's skin prickle with unease. It was the sound of someone who knew something you did not. "This is Director Maya Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Initiative. To the fleet currently positioned at the edge of our system, we acknowledge your presence. We have reviewed your terms. We find them unacceptable. You have mistaken our isolation for weakness. You have mistaken our silence for submission. You have mistaken our patience for passivity. These were errors. Fatal errors." She paused, and in that pause, Dravek felt something he had not experienced in his long military career. Real fear. "You wanted to know what we have been doing for 1,800 years, the human continued. "You are about to find out. Welcome to Earth. We have been waiting for you." The transmission ended. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. And every sensor on every ship in the fleet began screaming warnings simultaneously. The empty space around them was not empty at all. Humanity's awakening. First indication that something was catastrophically wrong came from the Crothian destroyer on the fleet's outer edge. One moment it was there, a proud vessel with shields at full power. The next moment, it simply ceased to exist. No explosion. No warning. Just gone. "Report," Dravek shouted. "Unknown contact, sir." "No, wait, multiple contacts. Thousands of them. They were just there, cloaked somehow. Our sensors never—" The tactical display lit up like a festival celebration. Red dots appeared throughout the fleet's formation. Not approaching from outside. They were already inside, surrounding them, having apparently been there all along, invisible and waiting. All ships, defensive formation. Return fire at will. But the human ships were not attacking yet. They simply held position, boxing in the assembly fleet. Dravek could see them now on the visual displays. They were smaller than his ships, sleeker, with angular designs that looked aggressive even when stationary. They were painted in dark colors that made them hard to see against the black of space. And there were so many of them. "Sir, new contacts emerging from the asteroid belt." "Thousands more." "How many ships do they have?" Dravek demanded. "At least 50,000, sir." "And that is just what we can see now. 50,000. Against his 10,000. The numbers alone were stunning, but numbers were not everything. His ships were larger, more heavily armored, with superior shields and weapons. Surely they still had the advantage. All batteries, lock onto the nearest human vessels. Prepare to The asteroid belt opened fire. Dravik had thought the asteroids were cover for human ships. He was wrong. The asteroids themselves were weapons. Thousands of rocks that had appeared completely normal suddenly revealed hidden railgun emplacements. They fired in perfect synchronization. What emerged from those weapons were not energy beams or plasma bolts. They were simple metal projectiles, slugs of iron and nickel, mined from the asteroids themselves. But they were moving at 15% of light speed. At that velocity, mass becomes an unstoppable force. The kinetic energy is astronomical. No shield can stop it. No armor can withstand it. The laws of physics become weapons. The slugs tore through Dravik's fleet like it was made of paper. Ships that had withstood the tests of time were split in half. Shields designed to deflect energy weapons were utterly useless against simple rocks moving at relativistic speeds. One cruiser took a hit to its power core and exploded, destroying 2 nearby ships in the blast. Evasive maneuvers. All ships scatter. But there was nowhere to scatter to. The humans had planned this perfectly. The asteroid belt surrounded them. Every direction led to more weapons platforms. And the human ships were moving now, darting between the asteroids with impossible agility, using them as cover while picking off any assembly vessel that tried to escape. Dravik watched his tactical display with growing horror. Ship after ship winked out of existence. His proud fleet was being slaughtered. And the worst part? The humans were not even using their full strength. Most of their ships had not fired a single shot. They were just watching, letting the automated defense systems do the work. Commander, incoming transmission from the human fleet. Put it through, Dravik said. His voice hollowed out. The same calm female voice filled his bridge. Commander Dravik of the Crothian Dominion. I am Director Okonkwo. I am giving you one chance to withdraw. Turn your fleet around and leave our system. Do it now. You cannot defeat us all, Dravik replied, trying to inject confidence he did not feel. We have thousands of ships still operational. We will overwhelm your defenses. You have 6,300 ships still operational, the human corrected. You lost over 3,000 in the first 30 seconds. And Commander, we have not even started fighting yet. What you are experiencing is just our automated border defense. Would you like to see what happens when we actually try? As if to punctuate her point, a wing of human fighters swept past his flagship. They were tiny things, no larger than a shuttle. But they moved with terrifying speed and precision. One of them launched a missile at a nearby battleship. The missile was not very large. It certainly did not look threatening. It punched through the battleship's shields without slowing down, penetrated the armor, and detonated inside. The entire ship crumpled inward like a crushed can. Some kind of gravitational weapon. Something that should not even be possible. You had 2,000 years of peace, Director Okonkwo said. You forgot what war looks like. You forgot what happens when species fight not for glory or honor, but for survival. Shall I teach you? Or will you withdraw? Dravik looked at his tactical display. Half his fleet was gone. The remainder was scattered, disorganized, being picked apart by an enemy that had been waiting for this exact scenario for 18 centuries. He thought about the countless lives under his command. He thought about his orders from the assembly. He thought about pride and duty and honor. Then he thought about that single word the humans had sent. Finally, they had been waiting for this, wanting this. They had spent nearly 2,000 years preparing to show the galaxy exactly what humanity could become when you gave them a common enemy and locked them away to plan. All ships, Dravik said quietly. Retreat. Full withdrawal. Return to assembly space. Commander? His tactical officer asked, shocked. Now? Dravik roared. before they decide to stop letting us leave. The fleet turned and fled. The human ships did not pursue. They simply held position, letting the assembly vessels limp away with their wounded and their dead. It was almost worse than if they had given chase. It meant they were confident. It meant they knew they had won without question. As his flagship crossed back out of the human system, Dravek received one final transmission. "Commander Dravek," Director Okonkwo said, "tell your assembly what you saw here. Tell them what happens when you cage a predator species for 2,000 years. Tell them humanity is done being quarantined. We are coming out, and we are not asking for permission anymore." The transmission ended. Dravik slumped in his command chair, staring at the view screen showing the human star system shrinking behind them. They had lost almost 7,000 ships, killed or captured. The worst military defeat in assembly history. And the humans had barely broken a sweat. Back on Earth, Director Maya Okonkwo stood in the command center deep beneath the surface. Around her, officers monitored displays showing every corner of the solar system. The asteroid belt weapons platforms were standing down. The fleet was returning to ready stations. Everything had gone exactly according to plan. Director, her second-in-command, approached. "The assembly fleet has cleared the system. Total casualties on our side, 0. We captured 42 of their ships intact. The rest were destroyed or driven off." "Good," Okonkwo replied. "Begin Phase 2. Send envoys to every member species of the assembly. Not to their governments, to their people. I want every civilian in assembly space to see what happened here. I want them to know their leaders sent a fleet to conquer us, and we sent it limping home. Asterisk, broadcasting now, Director. We are also activating the sleeper ships." Okonkwo smiled. The sleeper ships. Thousands of vessels that had been built over the past 500 years and hidden throughout assembly space. Small craft with skeleton crews in suspended animation, waiting for this exact moment. Now they would wake up behind enemy lines, ready to spread humanity's message. What message should we send? Her second asked. Okonkwo thought about the 1,800 years of isolation. She thought about the generations who had lived and died knowing they were trapped. She thought about the children who grew up training for a war they might never see. She thought about the determination it took to turn an entire species into a military force without losing their humanity in the process. "Tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them humanity has no desire to conquer anyone. Tell them we simply want to be free. Tell them we are offering real peace, not enforced submission. Tell them any species that treats us as equals will find us to be loyal friends and valuable allies. And if they refuse, then tell them we have 50,000 warships in our home system alone. Tell them we have sleeper ships hidden throughout their territory. Tell them we have spent 18 centuries learning every possible way to fight a war in space. And tell them that if they force us to prove it, we will." The messages went out across the galaxy. Within days, every civilian in assembly space had seen the footage. The proud fleet approaching Earth with confidence. The sudden ambush. The devastating weapons. The retreat. And most importantly, humanity's message of peace offering partnership instead of domination. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some species were terrified. Others were impressed. Many were angry at their governments for starting a fight they could not win. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Citizens demanded to know why their leaders had provoked humanity. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Supreme Arbiter Felzar faced the council. His career was over. He knew that. But more importantly, the entire structure of the assembly was threatened. 2,000 years of peace had just ended because of their arrogance. What do we do? One delegate asked, her voice shaking. "We negotiate," Felzar said simply. We contact Earth. We admit our mistake. We offer them a place at this council as equals. And we pray they accept. And if they demand more? Dravik asked bitterly. He had been summoned to explain the military disaster. Then we give it to them, Thalzar replied. Because the alternative is war against a species that has been preparing for this their entire existence. They did not just survive isolation. They thrived in it. They used it. They turned it into their greatest advantage. The council voted unanimously to sue for peace. An envoy was sent to Earth carrying an official apology and an offer of full membership in the assembly with no conditions, no restrictions, and no demands. Director Okonkwo received them personally. She listened to their apologies. She reviewed their offers. And then she smiled that same smile that had terrified Dravik when he first heard her voice. We accept your offer of membership, she said. On one condition. The assembly must be reformed. No more enforced peace. No more quarantines of entire species. From now on, this is a voluntary union of equals, not a hierarchy of the strong over the weak. The envoys agreed immediately. They had no choice. Within months, the reformed Galactic Assembly convened for the first time. Humanity took its seat among the ancient species, not as conquerors, not as subordinates. As equals, Director Okonkwo stood before the council and delivered humanity's first official address. For 1800 years, you locked us away because you feared what we might become. You were right to fear. We became exactly what you were afraid of. We became strong. We became united. We became dangerous. But we also became wise. We learned that true strength is not about domination. It is about cooperation. So we offer you a choice. She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. Work with us, and you will find humans to be the most loyal allies you have ever known. We will defend our friends with the same intensity we defend ourselves. We will share our technology, our resources, and our strength. Or, her voice hardened, continue to treat us as lessers. And you will learn why it was a mistake to give a warrior species 2,000 years to prepare for war. The choice is yours. The assembly chose wisely. They chose partnership. Within a generation, humanity had become one of the most respected species in the galaxy. Not because they were the strongest, though they were certainly that, but because they had learned something during their isolation that the others had forgotten. Peace is not the absence of strength. It is the choice not to use it. And humanity, having spent so long preparing for war, was more than ready to choose peace. As long as that peace came with respect, the 2,000-year age of enforced tranquility had ended. A new era had begun. An era where peace was chosen, not imposed. Where strength was respected, not feared. And where humanity smiled, because finally they were free. Asterisk.